And okay, there we go. So we're starting to record, and I'll start with my introduction. Hi there, this is Felika Ahostin Bryant. I'm the director of the Native American Educational and Cultural Center at Purdue University, and I'm very pleased to have Crystal Hanna from the Eiteljorg Museum. She is currently one of the artists in residence who's here for the month of September. And we are very pleased to have provide this videotape of Crystal, and she's gonna be sharing some information with us regarding her experience as one of the artists there. And so I will go ahead and open up and allow Crystal to introduce herself.
Well, good morning, and thank you so much for having me. I am Cherokee, a registered member of Cherokee Nation, and I live in Oklahoma. My mom's side of the family was full blood, and so I spent a lot of time, in a full blood home where they actually spoke Cherokee all the time. I did actually learn part of the language, but when I started school, my mother suggested that I just speak English because she was a non-English speaking person when she started school. So even though I can't promote my culture very much through my language, I feel like I'm making a contribution to the Cherokee culture through my pottery.
Okay, excellent. So as an artist, can you talk about your motivation for your pottery and some of the designs that you have in some of your artwork?
Absolutely. When I was in my late 40s, I happened to meet a full-blood Cherokee woman who was a master potter, and she was self-taught, and she was also what we call a treasure for Cherokee Nation. That's someone that promotes our culture in a variety of different ways. And it was a great time in my life because my children are already grown, or mostly grown. And so, for a lot of not only Indigenous women, but women have taken the path that I did. You get married pretty young, you raise your kids, you dedicate your life, to raising your family. And then it's like time for me. What can I do that would set an example or leave a legacy for my family and grandkids and my culture? So it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience so far. I'm never tired of it.
Oh, that's exciting. And some of the materials that you use as part of your artwork, is it something that you can acquire locally? For instance, I know with some of the Acoma Pueblo potteries, they have specific clay that they use that they get from their particular land. So I'm not sure if there's any type of special resource that you have to provide.
Well, I did just an old-fashioned apprenticeship with Anna Mitchell. I met her in 1998, but she always went to Santa Fe Indian Art Market. And so she said, well, I always start working in March. So if you want to start coming, like around the first part of March, we will go through the things that she had self-taught. And fortunately, there were people that took her under her wing that wanted to promote what we call like a more traditional style of the Southeastern Mississippian pottery. And I know the University of Arkansas and Gilcrease Museum, they really felt that there was a need for this traditional style of work because obviously through removal of all the tribes from the Southeast that, wound up in Oklahoma, a lot of the traditional arts were being lost. And I'm so happy, I can say probably in the last at least 10 to 15 years, all of our tribes, the Creeks, the Chickasaws, the Choctaws and Cherokees in particular, have really promoted our traditional arts. Even though, I do like the way that my ancestors did, and obviously a lot of people know that the Southwest potters go, hand dig their clay and hand process it. So I love all of those steps to go through the pottery. And I've tried to stay pretty true to those techniques, the materials that you use. Shell tempering was a really ancient method where you actually take the mussel shell, you fire it, and it's really soft and brittle, and you crush it up. So you actually have a tempered material to use as a grog and a binder to help in the drying. Sorry, that's my Oklahoma accent coming through. Drying and firing process. So you would not to get as much breakage. So, but there's so many ways, you know, that even pots can be started by hand. And if I do like a workshop, you know, I usually just start out with maybe like a little small pinch pot so people can get the feel of the clay, and then on to like a cylinder building where you actually take just any type of material. It doesn't have to be like bought, you know, items. I do like the traditional items that my ancestors might have been used, like a rock, you know, for like shaping the inside of a pot. A lot of my pieces are like what I call paddled, mainly just with a plain paddle to really make the wall of the pot tighter, so that I feel like then it's a little bit stronger when it's drying and when it's being fired. One of the things that the Cherokees have been trying to promote in the last several years is what we call carved wooden paddles. So the design is carved in the paddle. I don't know how close you can see some of these.
Yeah, you can. I can see it.
But the Cherokee were known to use this method to decorate their pottery. So I try to make my own paddles, but I wasn't too good, you know, with it. So I actually was gifted probably like a dozen paddles now that are designs that were actually used and have been recreated, you know, from hundreds of years ago. So it's awesome, and the kids always love to do those things. Adults, it's just one decorating technique, you know. And I also love to incorporate the ancient shell carving designs. While a lot of those I know have lost their meaning, and most people, you know, like recognize like the four directions, but there's so many designs that I researched, and I always have to mention my favorite book, which is right here. It is called Sun Circles in Human Hands, and so I do call it my Bible book. Unfortunately, the museum had this in their library collection, but it is just a wealth of information. I don't know if you can see, just kind of thumbing through the Southeastern designs from everything from shell work to pottery to the flint points. So I do like to use those designs and kind of put my own take on them, you know, whenever I make a piece, because the one thing that I did learn from my mentor, Anna, is, you know, be your own person in your art. You know, like I go to maybe a museum and see this awesome piece of what I call the Southeastern Mississippian style pottery. She said, don't really try to duplicate that, but definitely incorporate those designs and techniques into your work and then make it your own identity. So that really, I think, has kept me interested, you know, the last 20 plus years in making my pottery. And I actually, much like a lot of women, I think I maybe have to go back on that as part of the story, because women do raise their families and then are able to kind of pursue their own identity and not be, oh, there's, you know, Mark's mom or Jackie's mom, or oh, there's Mark's, you know, wife, you know, because so it was kind of cool. I was always the supportive one at the ball games, you know, and I enjoyed all that part of when my children were growing up, and now I have grandkids to enjoy. And the four granddaughters, their ages, I have to mention them, 7 to 12, and we recently entered the Cherokee Holiday Art Market, and it's sponsored by Cherokee Nation. And so they did some small paddle stamp bowls, and they won ribbons. The oldest granddaughter won a drawing from a shell that she was inspired from a shell carving design. So hopefully, I always say maybe one of those granddaughters will like the pottery. Even if it's not pottery in particular, there's still a lot of opportunities for Native kids, you know, to further their education as they become college age for art, you know, for their own style of art. So hopefully I'll have a potter though.
Fingers crossed. So with this particular art market, when is that coming up? Because you said it's in Cherokee, Oklahoma, correct?
Right. Well, actually, because obviously because of the pandemic, it's just a small art show, but it was a virtual art market, where we took the pieces in. We were all masked, and I had the girls fill out their forms, to enter the pieces. So I wanted to really for them to learn, all aspects of when you like enter an art show, and then they took the photos and they put it online during what is the Cherokee Homecoming. It's always over Labor Day weekend,
Okay.
when our chief makes his State of the Union message. And even our homecoming this weekend was a lot of it was virtual. So hopefully next year we'll all be in person again.
Okay, excellent. Now that brings up a good point. You talked about Cherokee, Oklahoma. So I'm not sure if you'd be willing just to kind of help distinguish between Cherokee, Oklahoma, Eastern Cherokee, and Cherokee, Alabama. But if you have a couple of notes, items you could share with us, I'd appreciate that.
Actually, the Eastern Band Cherokee, they're their own sovereign nation, and their reservation is in Cherokee, North Carolina. Fortunately, I was able to spend, I've been there twice, but this most recently was there 2 weeks in September after the reservation was actually opened up, because my aunt, which had been my mother's youngest sister, and we're really close to the same age, but Cherokee was her first language. And so she actually taught the Eastern Cherokee language in the school system. First she did, I think, 8th graders, and then now she was working with high school students, but I think they're all online right now. But since their own sovereign nation, then the Cherokees, mostly in Oklahoma, but I think we're like around 370,000 registered members of Cherokee Nation, and they are like obviously all over the United States. And Cherokee Nation has a great website to help people know, what's going on in Cherokee Nation. They're always very visible about how their money is spent. I'm very, very proud to be a member of my own tribe, because I feel like that they're through employment, through the arts, through education, that they're really trying to help our Cherokee people prosper and become better, well-educated, more well-spoken people, that we can share our culture with people like you.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for sharing that bit. So I'm not sure if you would like to highlight some of the pieces that you have there, some of your artwork, but if you'd like to share some, you're welcome to. I see that one of the pots right over your shoulder, but if there's some smaller pieces you'd like to talk about and just kind of talk about the motivation regarding the design and, why you chose that particular color, design, shape, or whatever you would like to share with us.
Sure. One piece that I've just been working on here this week is just you can see, it's just a small, what I call a turtle effigy. And so I think I like to do the turtles because Cherokee, it represents like prosperity and longevity. But it makes an awesome palette to recreate just some of the designs that I see. So like this particular one was like paddle stamped, on the spout, and then just some linear lines inside, representing like wind and sun. So I know a lot of the designs have probably lost their meanings, as I mentioned before, but I think it's really great to be able to think about the people that created those designs, the ancestors that did, and maybe what were they thinking. So it is kind of a spiritual thing, I think, for me to make the pottery. Just the clay itself, I had an geologist actually tell me that it takes about 30 million years for clay to form the consistency where it's like plastic enough and has all the right minerals in it and to make pottery. So that alone to me is just so amazing. And my clay for the last about 3 years has come from just north of Tulsa on my friend's allotted Indian land that she's had in her family since the allotment started in, I guess, like the 1830s, 40s. So it's been in her family that long. So it's kind of awesome to use clay from there.
I like the fact that you talked about turtles, because I'm not sure if you can see right over my shoulder this way, you know, the image that we have here. We have, this is one of the images we have at our Native American Center on campus. And we were very fortunate to have two artists that were pursuing their master's degree at the time that they were on campus. So they did this lovely piece of artwork to commemorate our 10th anniversary back in 2007. And for them, they talked about, I'm going to lean over here, the turtle was a main focal point just because of the different types of representation it has with many tribal nations. So I'm so happy you mentioned that. And I always like the fact that the turtle there is in the water. So you can see the images of water behind and how each one of these individual sun rays represents a specific tribal nation behind me. So you have the Eastern Band Cherokee, you have representation from our Western tribes, those that are down in Arizona, the Tohono O'odhams, oh my gosh, I knew I'd start forgetting all the different tribes.
There are a lot of tribes.
Exactly, the Yaqui, and then the green represents our Pueblos. We do have, we've had a number of students from the different Pueblos from New Mexico who've come through our doors. And then we have the flag of the Navajo Nation. Then we move over here to the blue ray that represents our Native Hawaiian students. And then the green represents our Lumbee students. Daniel Bird from the Kiwi Pueblo and Adam Brewer from the Lumbee Nation were both the artists that created this particular piece. So I always want to make sure I highlight them and talk about their artistic abilities and the fact that their legacy lives on with this particular painting. But they were trying to think of, we were talking about what would be a good image, and the turtle came up because I did mention how, again, the turtle has many different types of representation across all different tribal nations. It also has, you see it, you hear it in their stories and their creation stories. So I'm really happy that you were able to mention that, the turtle.
I like the turtles and the fish. I'm a real outdoor person anyway. But I would also like to mention, because I talked about the Sun Circles book, a book that's very inspiring to me. It doesn't have a lot of photos in it, but once you read it, because it was Myths of the Cherokee. In fact, I have it here. There's 2 volumes. And it was written by James Mooney in the late 1800s. He was actually an archaeologist that interviewed a lot of the elders. And so we have the written stories of so many things, like the turtle, and Selu was our corn woman, the grandmother water spider who brought the first fire to the animal kingdom. And it's really, like I said, there's not a lot of pictures in it, but so much inspiration. Just maybe I'll just like read a story and go, oh yeah, I think I need to make a pot that kind of represents that story. So it's not, like, for me, not just making the pottery itself, but trying to put some cultural significance in each one. And as I say, I do try to stay more traditional, but I do use, and I did learn this from my mentor, you should use the materials that are available to you. You need a paddle that's, you know, made and sold commercially, and that helps you with what you need to do, down to maybe even more traditional tools like just like a river cane, as I mentioned, the rocks. And I do try to burnish each of the pieces of my pottery. I do it more for aesthetics, but it does compress the clay, you know, and give you that more glazed look, even though the pots aren't glazed. So many different methods for making a pot in hand building. So I love them all.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, thank you for sharing that information. Let's see. with your artwork, do you just focus on pottery, or are there other types of artwork that you do?
Well, some pieces are more sculptural, but in order for it to be considered like pottery, it has to have like an opening to it. So and lately I've really enjoyed making, just some smaller pieces that, one thing that I did learn from my mentor, like if you're going to go to an art show and you have your travel expenses, your hotel, your gas. So she always encouraged me to make smaller pieces. Those are my gas money is what we called it. So I do try to do that. Lately, I have been making some, which would be more worn as like jewelry, but,
Okay.
and I do try to incorporate, those shell carving designs in those. And so even though it's a low-fired pottery, I've really had a great time, and it's just like maybe some slight relief work done in them. And then they're highly burnished and then blackened. And by blackening, I mean it's already been fired and vitrified to become pottery, but I'll put it in what we call a reduction firing, where I put it in another container, light the oak leaves, horse manure mixture, which is what I have at home, really dry, and light that up and then smolder it and put a lid on it, and it reduces the oxygen and you get the blackened piece from the carbon. And
Okay.
I love to do that, smoking and blackening.
And how long does a typical piece take? For instance, the big one that you have right over your shoulder, the black one, that particular item that you have, how long did that take as opposed to the turtle piece that you did?
What I found out in coil building, the coils go up pretty fast, and if I'm trying to get ready for a show, I might try to be working on 2 or 3 pieces at one time. So one might be a little softer, one might be more the leather stage, and one might be even rock hard. So at the rock hard stage, where there's no moisture in it, I do basically another burnishing, sometimes with oil.
Okay.
What I had read on the burnishing part of it, which I love to burnish. I have taken just some oil, and this is one of those pieces that has a shell temper in it, but I take the oil when it's like so dry, and I rub that oil in there. It can be canola oil, I had read that maybe they use bear grease, and so what that does, it allows the finer clay particles to surface, and it'll start looking really cloudy, and it gives, maybe for lack of a better word, something to slide that your burnishing stone on to really compress those clay particles, and as they lay flatter and flatter, then you get more of a mirror-like finish. I worked with an Eastern band, Cherokee, this summer. I was so lucky to work with Joel Queen, and we actually made a piece from his home. He just lives right outside of Cherokee, North Carolina. I'm not sure where I was going with that thought, but just so many things have helped me and people along the way and encouraged me. And just, like being here for 2 weeks and being accepted into the Artist in Residence program, I feel so inspired now to go home and really, try to use my time valuably, which this summer, I'm going to tell you, with the pandemic, it was really hard to get inspired. And I don't know, probably a lot of artists, they do go to museums or, get on the internet or speak with other artists. And then you can get maybe some more of those creative juices flowing. So, and I have one little art show in October. That's all I have for the rest of the year. But it's just a friend of mine. We just said, oh, we need people. So it's going to be like a small 20 people artist, and we're going to do social distancing and the mask. So I know all the artists have been hit hard by the pandemic, and not only artists, but the artists that, truly just rely on their art income. So it's not been a great year for us, but hopefully we'll find a way to dig ourselves out of this and still come out mentally, economically, physically. I'm hopeful that this will soon be over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do like the stories that you shared, the collaborative projects you have with other tribal nations, and I think it shows the intersectionality between the different tribal nations, and you find similarities in different cultures, stories, and just motivation. So I do appreciate that. Could you maybe share one more collaboration you had with with another artist that really helped to inspire you to come up with one of your pieces?
I have mostly worked alone. I have done very few, collaborations, but a few years ago I did work with a mask maker, but he had a form and his masks were covered with different colors of leather, and he really dressed them up and used a lot of the symbolism, on the faces themselves. So we had decided that I would do one of my native clay masks, and then he would do all the feather decorations, and we won a great ribbon at one of our Cherokee shows. But because I live in Tulsa and our capital is in Tahlequah, where a lot of my artist friends do live around there, it's still about an hour and a half away. You'd think that that's not very far, but sometimes it is harder to get to Tahlequah. And I have to say, put in a good word for Cherokee Nation, because they, maybe like 8 years ago, they opened the Spider Gallery in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. It's a very upscale gallery where you have to submit your photos, you have to get approved, to get into the gallery. And it's supported by it's Cherokee Nation. And it's a really great 70-30 split for the artists, so that it provides a great opportunity for all of our artwork to be shown, and economically for the artists to be able to sell their pieces through the gallery. And right behind that, in Tahlequah, they have converted one of the older buildings into the Cherokee Art Center, where they have facilities for if you want to teach, you can go in and teach, and they do all the promoting. They have awesome kiln rooms and work rooms, and they have studios. So like I say, Cherokee Nation really is doing a lot to promote not just our Cherokee people, but our artists in particular.
Okay, great. Well, I think that's a really good way to conclude our interview. I greatly appreciate you sharing all your wonderful stories and your artwork with us. So thank you so much for spending some time with us. And in closing, I know that you're going to be the artist in residence through this coming Saturday, the 19th, I guess, September 19th is going to be your last day at the Eiteljorg. So if anybody's interested, I'm not sure if there is a process that you would have to pre-register, or if you just would, you could just show up. If not, what I can do is put the details into our social media accounts, and I'll also share. I know the Eiteljorg does a really excellent job of promoting the artists, so I'm sure you're all over their social media accounts. Share and encourage people to come out and visit you and to see some of the artwork that you have there. So thank you again for making time for this interview, and thank you to Sandy as well as to all the Eiteljorg for allowing us to share this wonderful opportunity. We are going to conclude this interview, so thank you for joining us, and we'll be sharing this on all our social media accounts through the Purdue Native American Culture Center. Okay, well, thank you, Crystal, and you have a safe trip home.
Thank you. And, even though the Santa Fe Indian Art Market was canceled this year, I was able to, it would have been my 19th year to get into the art market, which is really by far my best art market, because there's so many collectors there that actually collect pottery. But I'm in for next year. So if you come to Santa Fe next August, hopefully I'll be there and you'll have to come by my booth.
Okay, great. So that's August 2021. We'll see if we can make a special trip out to Santa Fe to find you.
Yeah, come on out.
Okay, thanks again. Have a good day. Bye-bye.